The stars above the world of Luminara shone quietly, yet fear had taken hold across its lands. The Luminan Union was known as one of the oldest and most peaceful civilizations in the region. For centuries they had avoided war, believing that reason and understanding could solve any conflict. Their cities floated among the clouds, their technology clean and elegant, their people calm and intelligent. They lived in peace for so long that the idea of real danger had become a distant memory. That peace ended when the Varn Dominion arrived. The Varn came from beyond the dark edges of known space. Their ships entered Union territory without warning. At first, the Luminans thought it was a mistake, or perhaps an exploration mission. But then, one by one, their outer colonies fell silent. No messages returned. No ships came back. The Varn moved forward, system by system. Their purpose unknown, but their power clear inside the Grand Council chamber of Luminara. A gathering of leaders stood before a massive screen filled with maps of their territory. Red lights blinked across the border lines. The air was filled with tension. Chancellor Orin, an elderly Luminan, with silver skin and calm eyes, looked around the room and spoke softly. "We have lost contact with 5 colonies in less than 1 cycle. We cannot ignore this any longer." The others nodded, but their faces showed fear. Counselor Thesa raised her voice. "Our fleets are not ready for war. We have scholars and traders, not fighters. If we resist, they will crush us. If we do nothing, they will still come. What choice do we have?" Orin turned toward the central console. "There is one choice left. We can send a signal." A call for aid gasps filled the chamber. The idea of calling outsiders for help was almost unthinkable to the Luminans. They believed in unity, not dependence. But these were desperate times. Orin continued. "Our beacon network can reach beyond our galaxy. We have never used it before, but the scientists say it is ready. Somewhere out there, perhaps someone will hear us," the council agreed with heavy hearts. Within hours, a massive transmitter on the surface of Luminara powered up. Blue energy gathered around its rings, sending a wave through the endless dark of space. The message was simple. It carried no demand, no threat. Only 3 words repeated again and again. "We seek help." Days passed. Then weeks. No answer came. Hope began to fade. Some citizens started leaving the cities, traveling to underground shelters. Others whispered that the signal had been foolish, that no one would come. Still, the beacon kept pulsing through the stars, lonely voice calling for help in a silent universe. In the 7th week, a strange event occurred. Deep within the communication center, an operator named Laro noticed something on his console. A single light blinked where none had before. He leaned closer, his heart beating faster. The signal was faint, but real. He activated the translator, but the device struggled to decode the message. The frequency was unlike any known pattern, he reported to his superior, and soon the council was summoned again. Scientists gathered around the main display, trying to analyze the strange message. It was short, only 1 sentence. The translator worked slowly, adjusting tones and languages until the words appeared on screen. Message received. "We are coming." The room fell silent. No one spoke for several seconds. Counselor Thesa was the first to break the silence. Who sent it, no one knew. The signal carried no standard identification mark, no planetary code. The energy pattern was unusual, dense, and powerful. It did not match any known civilization. Orin leaned forward, his voice steady but curious. "Where did it come from?" A scientist checked the coordinates and hesitated before answering. "It came from outside our registered space, far beyond the mapped sectors, near the Perseus Rift, a region marked as uninhabitable due to gravitational storms and high radiation that made no sense. No life could survive there, at least according to everything the Union knew. Yet the signal was real. Someone had heard them, and that someone was coming from a place no one had ever explored for the first time in months. The council did not know whether to feel hope or fear. The following days were filled with speculation. The media spoke of mysterious saviors. Scientists debated what kind of beings could live in such harsh space. Some said they might be machines. Others believed they could be ancient explorers from forgotten times. The people of Luminara waited anxiously. Their skies were quiet, their hearts uncertain. Then, one night, everything changed. Across the orbital observatories, sensors began detecting strange movements. Massive objects entered the edge of their system. The technicians stared in disbelief as readings came in. The ships were enormous, far larger than any Union vessel. Their energy signatures were stable but strong, almost overwhelming the instruments. The defense fleet scrambled to intercept, though their ships were tiny compared to the newcomers. The alien vessels did not open fire or respond to greetings. They simply approached, steady and silent, like mountains drifting through space. Inside the council chamber, the leaders watched the transmission from orbit. The unknown fleet came closer, and the image grew sharper. The ships were not elegant or smooth like Union designs. They were rough, angular, and dark, covered in thick plating that looked as though it had survived 1,000 impacts. Every surface bore marks of repair, like scars of experience. A deep voice came through the communication channel. It was filtered through translation software, yet its tone carried weight and certainty. "This is Commander Rian of the United Earth Fleet. We received your call. We are here to help." The council members looked at each other in shock. The name meant nothing to them. Earth was not on any of their records. They had never heard of a United Earth Fleet. Orin stood up slowly and replied, "We welcome you, Commander. We did not expect anyone to come from beyond the rift. We are deeply thankful." "May we know who you are?" Rian's voice came again, calm and respectful. "We are from a world far from your maps, a world you would not call gentle. Our people learned long ago how to survive where others could not. We heard your message and decided to answer." The words were simple, yet something in his tone made the Luminans uneasy. Not fear, but awe. It was as if this commander carried the weight of a world that had seen endless struggle and yet stood unbroken. After the communication ended, the council gathered in private. The scientists presented their findings about the newcomers. The materials of their ships were unknown, but stronger than anything the Union had created. Their energy sources seemed limitless, and their engines could maneuver through gravitational storms with ease. Counselor Thesa whispered, "How could anyone survive in such a place? Their world must be beyond comprehension." Orin nodded slowly. "Perhaps that is why they came from the uninhabitable zones. Maybe what we call unlivable is what they call home." The phrase spread quickly among the people. The newcomers became known by a single title, Deathworlders. It was not meant as an insult, but as a description of mystery and respect. To live on a world of death and still rise strong enough to cross galaxies was something beyond imagination. In the days that followed, humans of Earth began descending toward Luminara. Their ships hovered above the capital city, releasing bright landing craft. Crowds gathered to watch as the ramps opened. From inside stepped tall figures in thick suits of armor, their movements steady and confident. The sunlight reflected off their visors as they walked toward the waiting council delegation. Rian, the human commander, removed his helmet and looked around. His face was weathered but calm. His eyes were sharp, filled with quiet strength. When he spoke, his words were clear. "We received your call because we know what it means to be alone in danger. Tell us everything about your enemy, and we will see what can be done." The council escorted them to the Hall of Unity, where they shared everything they knew about the Varn Dominion. The humans listened without interrupting. When the presentation ended, Rian asked a few questions, simple but direct. His focus was practical. He wanted to know about numbers, patterns, and weaknesses. The Luminans expected fear or hesitation, but instead they saw thoughtful planning. The humans were calm, almost too calm. When Rian finally spoke again, he said only, "We have faced worse odds before." "You are not alone now." Those words spread through Luminara, like light through darkness. Citizens who had once hidden in fear began to hope again. The humans did not promise miracles. They did not speak of glory or power. They spoke of cooperation and resilience. That alone was enough to change everything as the suns of Luminara set that night. The sky glowed with the reflection of human ships orbiting above. The people looked up and whispered in wonder. No one had expected help to come from the most dangerous region of the galaxy. Yet there they were, the Deathworlders, beings from a harsh world who had crossed the stars not to conquer, but to answer a cry for help, and so began the first alliance between the peaceful Luminan Union and the mysterious Deathworlders from Earth. None of them knew yet how this partnership would shape the future. But one thing was certain. The galaxy would never see humanity the same way again. The next morning on Luminara was unlike any before. The people who had once lived in quiet harmony now woke up to see strange ships hanging above their world. They were massive, almost like floating mountains of metal. The human fleet stayed in high orbit, their formations strong and steady. Every movement seemed precise, as if every pilot knew exactly where to be and what to do in the capital city. People gathered in open plazas to watch the skies. Some looked with fear, others with awe. For generations, the Luminans had believed that strength came from peace and logic. Now they saw a different kind of strength above them. One that carried the marks of countless challenges survived. Inside the Grand Council Hall, Chancellor Orange stood by the wide glass window as the first rays of sunlight touched the city's towers. Behind him, Councillor Thesa entered quietly. She looked tired but alert. The human leader, Commander Rian, has requested a meeting this morning, she said. Doran nodded slowly. Prepare the chamber. Let us see what these Deathworlders have to say. When the humans arrived, they came not as conquerors, but as partners. Their landing craft descended in perfect silence, guided by faint blue thrusters. When the ramp opened, Commander Rian stepped out, followed by a small group of officers. Their uniforms were plain, functional, and marked with symbols of their world, a blue and green circle representing Earth. Rian greeted the council with a slight bow. We thank you for your welcome. We know the situation you face is serious. Our goal is to help, not to take control. But we need full understanding before we act, or in motion for him to sit. The chamber lights dimmed slightly as a large projection filled the air between them, showing star charts and data from the recent attacks. Rian studied the images carefully. He spoke little, but his eyes followed every detail. When the presentation ended, he looked up. These Varn, he said calmly. Do they ever communicate, or do they strike without reason? Thesa replied. We have tried many times to open contact. They never answer. They simply move forward and take what they want. We do not even know what they seek. Rian nodded thoughtfully. Then it is not diplomacy they understand. We will need to prepare in other ways. The Luminan Council exchanged uneasy glances. To them, the word prepare sounded like the beginning of conflict. For a moment, silence filled the room. Then Orin asked, How do your people survive in such a harsh world, Commander? How did you become so strong? Rian looked at him and answered with calm honesty. Our planet is not gentle. It gives life, but it also tests us every day. The storms can destroy our cities. The oceans can swallow our lands. The smallest creature can be dangerous if ignored. To live on Earth, one must learn to adapt, to think, to stand again and again. We learned early that strength is not about power. It is about never giving up. The council members listened closely. The words were simple, yet they carried a weight deeper than logic. For the first time, they understood what the name Deathworlders truly meant. These humans were not dangerous because they sought war. They were dangerous because nothing in the universe could easily break them. Rian then spoke again. We will begin by studying your technology. Your defenses are advanced but not designed for fast conflict. We can improve them. We will also train your soldiers to think differently. Fear is your greatest enemy now. Not the Varn. That day marked the beginning of a new era for Luminara. The humans worked with speed and purpose. They did not waste time in long meetings or endless debates. They walked among engineers, explained new systems, and rewired old machines. Their way was different, practical and direct. Luminan scientists were fascinated by their tools. The materials humans brought were strong, yet simple in design. Their ships carried weapons that could be adjusted within hours, not months. Every system had backup plans. Even their smallest devices showed signs of adaptability. One young engineer named Selen spent long hours observing the humans. He was quiet and curious, always asking questions. Rian noticed him one evening and said, "You remind me of our young scientists back home. Always searching for better ways to survive." Selen smiled. "We study perfection. You study survival. Yet both seek the same thing, to continue living." Rian nodded. "Survival teaches perfection faster than comfort ever will." Over the next weeks, the humans began training Luminon defense teams. They gathered soldiers and volunteers in wide-open fields outside the city. The first sessions were difficult. The Luminans were used to gentle routines and careful methods. The humans taught them to react quickly, to adapt when things changed unexpectedly. A human officer named Mira stood before the group during one training session. "When your shields fail, you do not freeze. You find another way. When your energy is gone, you use your mind. The moment you give in to fear, the battle is lost. Stay calm. Think." Move. The Luminans tried, stumbled, and tried again. Slowly, they began to improve. They learned to move with rhythm, to anticipate rather than react. Each day, they grew more confident. At night, the humans returned to their ships to rest. They spent their time analyzing data from the Varn's attacks. Rian and his officers studied patterns, trying to understand the enemy's structure. They discovered that the Varn always targeted energy hubs first. Cutting power to cities before advancing, Rian called a meeting with the council. "Your cities are beautiful but vulnerable," he said. "We must create secondary grids that can operate even if the main power fails. We will install generators in hidden areas and shield them from scans. The Varn must never find them easily." The Luminans agreed and offered full cooperation. The humans worked day and night, setting up new systems across the planet. Their precision amazed everyone. No task was too small. Even their engineers showed deep discipline, checking every detail twice before moving on. As the days turned into weeks, a quiet friendship began to grow between the two species. The Luminans admired the humans' patience and determination. The humans respected the Luminans' intelligence and creativity. Each side had something the other lacked, and together they became stronger. One evening, while standing on a high balcony overlooking the shining city, Rian spoke with Orin. The air was cool, and the sky glowed with distant stars. "You have a peaceful world," Rian said softly. "It would be a tragedy to lose it, but peace without preparation invites danger. Your people must learn to defend what they love." Orin looked at him thoughtfully. "And your people, Commander? Do they ever rest from defense?" Rian smiled faintly. "Sometimes. But we know peace is never permanent. That is why we value it so deeply." When it comes, their conversation ended with mutual understanding. Orin began to see that humanity's strength was not born from aggression, but from appreciation. The harsher the struggle, the more precious peace became. Soon, first signs of change appeared among the Luminan citizens. They no longer spoke only of fear. They spoke of readiness. They practiced drills, reinforced buildings, and learned to adapt their energy systems. Children in schools learned new stories about courage and cooperation. The humans did not bring weapons alone. They brought mindset. Selen, the young engineer, stood one evening before a new energy shield that he had rebuilt using both Luminan and human technology. He tested it, and it held perfectly even under heavy simulation. He turned to his human mentors with bright eyes. "It works." "We did it together," Mira clapped him on the shoulder. "Together is the only way we survive." The news spread quickly. The people cheered. For the first time, they felt that they could face the future with hope, yet far beyond the edge of the system. Unseen by both humans and Luminans, the Varn fleet began to move again. Their dark ships turned toward Luminara, their scanners detecting the growing power of the planet. On Luminara, no one knew how soon the danger would come, but preparations continued. Rian gathered his officers and spoke to them in private aboard the flagship Horizon. "We will protect them as we protect our own. These people have courage. They only needed to remember it. When the time comes, they will stand beside us, not behind us," his officers agreed. They knew their commander spoke the truth. Humans had seen countless struggles before. They knew that strength was never just in weapons, but in the will to fight for life and hope. As night fell once again, the two worlds, one born of peace and one forged in struggle, stood united above the glowing cities of Luminara. The air was calm, the stars endless, and the bond between them stronger than ever. The humans had come not as saviors, but as teachers, as allies, and as friends. The Luminans had opened their doors to strangers and found something they had lost. Long ago, the courage to face the unknown, and somewhere, in the silence between stars, the coming storm was gathering, testing whether this new alliance could truly stand the trial that awaited them. The days following the human arrival changed Luminara more than anyone had expected. The once quiet and gentle world began to hum with new energy. Human ships floated above like silent guardians, and their presence gave people both comfort and curiosity. Across the planet, schools, research centers, and military outposts were being transformed. The humans shared knowledge freely and guided without pride. Commander Rian and his team had one clear goal: to prepare Luminara for what was coming. He knew that the Varn were not finished. The brief silence from the outer colonies was not mercy, it was delay. He had seen such tactics before, in other corners of the galaxy. He understood that predators always waited for their prey to relax before they struck again. In a large training ground outside the capital, rows of Luminan volunteers stood under the bright sun. They wore new armor, lighter and more flexible than before. Human instructors walked among them, giving directions and corrections. Was filled with the sound of energy weapons being tested and engines warming up. The scene was one of learning, not of fear. Mira, one of the human officers, moved along the line, observing quietly. Her voice carried confidence as she spoke. Must learn not to freeze when things change. On our world, storms can shift direction in moments. You survive only if you move with them, not against them. Your mind is your greatest weapon. Use it before anything else. The Luminans listened carefully. They had never been taught this way before. Their own defense systems had always relied on precision and pre-planning. But the humans spoke of improvisation, of adapting in the moment. It was strange and exciting. One of the trainees, Selen, the young engineer who had once worked with Mira, raised his hand. Commander, how can we fight against something so much stronger than us? Even with your help, their fleet is huge. Rian, who had been standing nearby, turned toward the group. His tone was calm but firm. Strength is not only about power or size. It is about understanding yourself and refusing to give up. On our world, even the smallest creature can bring down a giant if it knows where to strike. You must learn to think like that. He pointed toward the sky, where the faint outline of human ships shimmered above the clouds. Those ships are strong because every part of them is built by people who refuse to stop trying. 8. That is the lesson of strength. It is built over time through effort and failure, never through comfort. The Luminans nodded quietly. For them, this was a new way of seeing life. They had spent centuries avoiding struggle, believing peace was natural and eternal. Now they realized peace was something that had to be protected, not just enjoyed. Days passed, and the bond between the two species deepened. The humans began to admire the Luminans' intelligence and creativity. Their minds worked in patterns that humans found beautiful. The Luminans, in return, admired the humans' willpower and courage. It was a balance that both sides needed at night. Rian often stood on the observation deck of his flagship Horizon, watching the glowing cities below. The lights reminded him of Earth's great cities, far away across countless stars. Mira joined him one evening and said softly, "They are learning fast." "It feels good to see hope return to their faces." Rian nodded. "Hope is a weapon too. Keeps people moving when fear tries to stop them." He turned to the display in front of him. Data from distant sensors filled the screen. He knew the silence from the Varn would not last. Every reading told him that their fleet was still active, regrouping somewhere beyond the system. The humans had seen enough wars to recognize the signs. The next strike would come soon, and it would be larger than before. The next morning, Rian met with Chancellor Orin and Counselor Thesa in the Hall of Unity. The large crystal walls reflected the sunlight, filling the room with a soft blue glow. "The preparations are almost complete," Orin said. "Your people have taught us more in a few weeks than we learned in decades. Our engineers say we can now power our shields for much longer, and our communication systems are faster than ever." Rian smiled slightly. "That is good news. But there is one more lesson you must learn before the real test comes. You must learn how to act when everything seems lost." Thesa frowned. "You mean when we are defeated?" "No," Rian replied calmly. "I mean when you feel defeated. Those are not the same thing. A person can feel defeated and still keep fighting. That is the difference between losing and surviving." The words sank deep into their minds. The humans spoke with such certainty that it was difficult not to believe them. That afternoon, the humans arranged a large simulation. They created a mock battle scenario using holographic drones. The Luminan pilots had to defend a virtual city against an unpredictable attack. The simulation was designed to teach adaptability. At first, the Luminans followed their usual methods, relying on formation and logic. But when the holographic enemies changed tactics suddenly, their defenses collapsed. The simulation ended quickly. Mira walked among them and said gently, "See, your plans were good, but you stopped thinking once the plan failed. You must stay alert, think fast, and act with purpose, even when things go wrong. The universe does not wait for you to catch up." The trainees tried again and again and again. Each time, they lasted longer. They learned to move differently, to communicate better, to take small risks that made big changes. By the end of the day, they managed to win one round. The entire group cheered, and Mira smiled proudly. "Now you are beginning to understand." Evening came, and the training field grew quiet. The humans and Luminans sat together, sharing food and stories. The humans told tales of Earth, of mountains that reached the clouds, oceans that roared with endless waves, of creatures that could live in freezing cold or burning heat. The Luminans listened with wide eyes. To them, Earth sounded both terrifying and beautiful. Selen asked softly, "How do your people find peace on such a world?" Rian looked up at the stars before answering. "We find peace not by avoiding danger, but by building something worth protecting. Every day we survive, we build. Every day we build, we live. That is what makes peace meaningful." The young Luminans nodded, realizing that peace was not the absence of hardship, but the victory over it. Over the next few days, new defenses were deployed around Luminara. Energy shields covered major cities. Orbiting satellites formed protective layers around the planet. Drones patrolled the outer atmosphere. Human engineers worked side by side with Luminans, teaching them how to maintain and improve every system. In the process, friendships grew. Luminon children watched human engineers with curiosity, fascinated by their tools and language. Artists began painting murals of the two species together, symbols of unity and hope. Then, late one night, a signal came through from the outer observation posts. A small satellite had detected large energy spikes near the edge of the system. Rian received the report instantly. He looked at the data and knew what it meant. The Varn were returning. He called an emergency meeting with the council. "The Varn fleet is approaching. They are still far, but they are coming in full force. You have done well to prepare, but this will be a real test." Orin stood tall. "We are ready, Commander. We have learned from your people. We will not run this time." Rian nodded with respect. "Then we will face them together. Remember, you are no longer the same people you were when we arrived. You have grown stronger in spirit and mind." The Varn will not expect that the next day was filled with quiet tension. Across Luminara, the defense systems went into alert mode. Citizens stayed calm but alert, guided by the humans' organized plans. The training had changed them all. From the observation deck of the horizon, Mira looked out into the stars. In the distance, she could see faint lights moving against the darkness, the first sign of the Varn fleet. "They are coming," she said. Softly, Rayan stood beside her, his gaze steady. "Then we will show them what Deathworlders and Dreamers can do together below. On the surface, The people of Luminara looked up at the sky. They saw the stars glowing, brighter, unaware that it was not stars, but engines of the incoming fleet. Yet they felt no panic. They remembered the words they had learned, hope is a weapon too. And as night fell, the world that once believed itself too fragile to survive now stood ready to fight for its future. Humanity had taught them not only how to defend, but how to believe. The lesson of strength was complete, and soon it would be tested in the fire of reality. The sky above Luminara turned dark as the warning alarms echoed across the capital. Massive ships began to appear on the outer edge of the system. The Varn fleet had arrived. Their ships were dark and angular, moving in a perfect formation that looked like a wall of metal and flame. Every screen in the command center showed the same view. Hundreds of enemy vessels closing in fast. Inside the command hall, Council Leader Terran stood frozen as he watched the incoming data. His hands trembled slightly. "They came sooner than expected," he whispered. Around him, officers hurried between stations, calling out readings and warnings. The tension was heavy. Then Rian, the leader of the human fleet, stepped into the hall with his usual calm walk. He did not rush. He did not panic. His voice was quiet but firm when he said, "Let them come closer." The room fell silent. The council looked at him in disbelief. Terrence spoke quickly. "You want them to come closer? They will destroy us if they get within range." Rian looked at the main screen. His eyes were steady. "No," he said. "They will destroy themselves if we play this right." Hours earlier, the humans had worked tirelessly to prepare traps across the system. They planted gravity mines in asteroid belts, released cloaked drones to hide in debris fields, set up decoy beacons that emitted fake signals. Every move had a purpose. The humans did not believe in waiting behind walls. They believed in using every piece of the environment as a weapon. Rian turned to his communication officer, a calm woman named Mara. "Signal the fleet," he said. "Begin Phase 1. Out in space, dozens of human ships moved silently through the blackness. They activated a pattern of faint lights that resembled drifting debris. The Varn scouts scanned the area but detected nothing unusual. Confident in their numbers, they advanced. The humans watched and waited. Back in the command hall, Terran asked, "Are your people ready?" Rian nodded. "They have been ready since we arrived," he said. "We are Deathworlders. We do not wait for safety. We make it." The first explosions began when the Varn fleet crossed into the outer ring of mines. The hidden charges released bursts of energy that ripped through several small ships. For a moment, the Varn formation wavered. The rest of their ships began to scan the area, realizing something was wrong. Then another wave of explosions shook the darkness. Mara smiled slightly as the readings appeared on her screen. "They hit the first field," she said. Rian gave a small nod. "Good, activate the drones." Thousands of small drones came to life, their engines burning with faint blue light. They darted toward the enemy ships like a swarm of insects, each carrying small but powerful energy disruptors. The Varn fired wildly, trying to destroy them, but the drones moved too fast. Each explosion of light marked a drone attaching itself to a ship, draining its power or blinding its sensors. Inside the Varn flagship, panic spread among the commanders. Their systems failed to respond. Their shields flickered. Their weapons missed targets. They had never faced an enemy like this before. Meanwhile, in the Luminan command hall, Terran and the Council watched the screens with wide eyes. They could not believe what they were seeing. For years, the Varn had crushed every defense that stood before them. Yet here, in a matter of minutes, their perfect formation had turned into confusion. Rian studied the tactical display and said, "Begin Phase 2. Move in the strike wings." 3 human cruisers advanced from behind a moon where they had been hiding. Their engines roared as they accelerated toward the enemy line. The moment they entered range, they opened fire. Energy beams cut through space, striking the nearest Varn ships with precision. The Union soldiers watching from their own smaller ships cheered. They had never seen such courage. On one of the human ships, Captain Leo led his team with calm confidence. His crew moved quickly, adjusting power and aiming the cannons. "Steady," he said. Focus on the weak points. Every shot they fired was planned. Every movement was controlled. The Varn returned fire, but the humans were ready. Their shields absorbed the blasts, and when one ship was damaged, another moved forward to cover it. In the command hall, Terran leaned toward Rian and asked, "How can your people stay so calm?" Rian answered quietly, "Because fear wastes time. We act first and think after the danger is gone." As the battle raged, the Luminan fleet joined in under human guidance. They had been training for weeks, and now their discipline showed. Their ships moved with new coordination, covering human vessels and using tactics they had learned from Rian's officers. The Union pilots who once feared battle now fought with pride. The battle grew more intense as the Varn fleet pushed deeper into the system. They fired giant plasma bursts that lit up the stars. Several Luminan ships were hit, but rescue crafts moved fast, pulling survivors before the ships exploded. The humans never left anyone behind. "Every life mattered," Mara called out from her console. "Enemy flagship detected at Sector 3. Rian looked at the screen and said, "Target confirmed. Prepare the hammer strike." Deep in space, a massive human warship began to charge its main cannon. It was called the Resolute. The ship's crew worked in perfect sync, aligning the weapon. The energy built up until the entire ship glowed faintly blue. Then, with one command, the cannon fired. The beam tore through the darkness, striking the Varn flagship directly. The shockwave was visible even from the surface of Luminara. The sky flashed white, and for a moment, the sound of cheering filled the streets below. The flagship was gone. The Varn formation broke completely. Ships turned and fled in every direction. Terran stood speechless. "They are retreating," he said softly. The council room erupted in joy. Officers hugged one another. Some even cried, but Rian did not smile yet. "Do not celebrate too soon," he said. "We must make sure they do not come back." He ordered the fleet to chase the retreating ships, but only for a short distance. Then he gave the command to stop. "They will remember this," he said, "and they will think twice before they return." When the fighting finally ended, silence filled the command hall. The battle had lasted for 6 hours, but it felt like a lifetime. The Luminans had survived because of the humans. Rian turned to Terran and said, "Your people fought well. You should be proud." Terran nodded, still trying to find words. "We could not have done this without you," he said. "You came from nowhere, and you saved us all." Rian looked out at the view of space, where the wreckage of the enemy fleet drifted like distant shadows. "We did what needed to be done," he said. "That is what Deathworlders do. We survive and we help others survive." As news of the victory spread, the cities of Luminara filled with lights and celebrations. The people looked up at the sky with new hope. They sang songs for the humans who had come from the harshest world to bring them peace in the human command center.
The crews were quiet.
They were tired, but proud. Rian walked among them, thanking each one personally. He knew that survival was not just about strength, but about unity. He believed that courage was a light that could spread to others. Later, when he finally stood alone at the viewing deck, he looked at the blue glow of Luminara below. He thought of his homeworld, a place full of danger and beauty, where storms could destroy cities, but also give birth to rainbows. That world had shaped them into what they were: survivors, explorers, and protectors. Mara joined him and said softly, "They will remember this day forever." Rian nodded. "They should. Not because we fought," he said, "but because they learned what it means to stand together." As the human ships floated quietly in orbit, the stars above seemed brighter. The war was not over, but the balance had changed. The Deathworlders had shown the galaxy that even from the most dangerous world, strength could rise not from fear but from courage. And on that night, across Luminara, every being looked up and whispered the same truth. The Deathworlders had come, and nothing in the galaxy would ever be the same again. The stars over Luminara were peaceful again. The bright flashes of battle had faded, and the cold silence of space returned. Where once enemy ships had filled the sky, now only debris drifted slowly through the void. The war was over, at least for now. The Varn fleet had been defeated and driven back beyond the borders of the Union. Inside the Luminan capital, life began to return to normal. Buildings that had been dark during the siege now glowed with light again. The great towers hummed softly as power returned to the city. The people filled the streets, not in fear, but in celebration. They waved banners of silver and blue, the colors of their planet. But this time, they also carried the symbol of the humans, a simple circle crossed by a single star. It was a sign of unity, in the main command hall. Council leader Terran stood before the great screen that once showed the chaos of battle. Now it displayed calm stars. His voice was steady when he spoke to his people. "Today we are free," he said, "and we owe that freedom to our friends from the world we once called unreachable." They ended. His words echoed through the hall, and those who listened felt pride and gratitude. Rion stood nearby, quiet as always. He was not one for long speeches. He simply nodded to the crowd as they cheered. His uniform was marked with dust and scratches, but he wore it with pride. Around him stood Mara, Captain Leo, and several other human officers. They looked tired but content. When the cheering ended, Terran turned to Rion. "You and your people have given us more than safety," he said. "You have given us courage." Rion smiled faintly. "Courage was already here," he said. "You only needed to remember it." In the days that followed, the humans worked side by side with the Luminans to repair the damage. They did not act like heroes or conquerors. They helped rebuild power systems, repaired damaged orbit stations, and cleared the remains of battle from space. Luminan engineers watched in fascination. Human crews worked with tools and machines that looked simple but worked with perfect efficiency. The humans never wasted time or energy. One morning, as the twin suns rose over the horizon, children ran through the streets playing games. Some wore small badges shaped like stars. One child pointed to the sky and shouted, "That is where the Deathworlders came from." The others looked up in wonder. To them, the humans were legends, protectors from far away who had appeared when all hope was gone, at the same time. In the upper district of the city, a memorial was being built. It stood tall and bright, made of polished metal and crystal. At its center was an inscription written in both Luminan and human languages. It read, "Strength is not born from safety. It is born from struggle, and it belongs to all who rise again." The council decided that every school and academy across the Union would teach this phrase to the next generations. Inside the Union headquarters, a great meeting took place between the council and the human leaders. The topic was the future. The Luminans wanted to form an alliance, one that would protect both their worlds from future threats. Rion listened carefully to every proposal. He understood their intentions but remained cautious. "We can help," he said, "but we do not lead others. We stand beside them." His words were simple, but they carried great meaning. Terran nodded in agreement. "Then we will stand together," he said, "as friends, not as subjects." The room filled with quiet approval. For the first time in their history, the Union was no longer just a collection of peaceful worlds. It was something stronger, bound by shared courage. Days passed into weeks. Slowly, the humans began to prepare for departure. Their ships had been repaired and new missions awaited them in distant sectors. They had come when called and stayed until the danger was gone. Now it was time to move on. Before they left, Rion visited the memorial. He stood there alone, reading the words engraved in the crystal. The morning light reflected on his armor. He thought about the battles fought, the friends lost, and the world saved. He felt no pride in victory, only quiet satisfaction that life could continue. Mara walked up beside him. "You think they will be safe now?" she asked. Rion nodded slowly. "They will be ready," he said. They learned fast, and they learned well. Nearby, Leo and his crew were saying goodbye to the Luminan engineers they had trained. They exchanged handshakes and smiles. The Luminans promised to keep improving their defense systems and to pass on the knowledge they had gained. "You taught us how to fight," one young engineer said, "but also how to think." Leo smiled. "Then we did our job." Later that day, the humans gathered at the main spaceport. Hundreds of Luminans had come to see them off. The wide landing field was lined with banners and flowers. Children held small flags, waving them as the human ships prepared to launch. The air was filled with warmth and gratitude. Terran stepped forward and handed Rian a silver emblem shaped like a star surrounded by a circle. "This is the seal of unity," he said. "It will remind you that you always have friends here." Rian accepted it with a small nod. "Thank you," he said. "And remember, if the darkness comes again, call us. The Deathworlders will hear." The engines of the human ships began to glow as they powered up. The sound was deep and steady, like the heartbeat of a giant. The crowd stepped back as the ships lifted slowly from the ground. Dust swirled through the air, catching the morning light. As the ships rose higher, voices called out from the crowd. Some shouted thanks, others blessings. The humans inside their ships could hear the faint echoes even through their communication lines. For a moment, everyone on Luminara looked up together. The sight of the great ships rising into the sky was something they would never forget. In the command deck of the main human ship, Rian looked out at the shrinking view of the planet below. "Set course for home," he said. "We have done what we came for." Mara nodded and entered the coordinates. The stars began to shift as the fleet prepared to jump into. Faster than light travel, as they moved away from the Luminan system. Rian looked one last time at the bright blue glow of the twin suns. He thought of all the worlds still out there that might one day need help. He did not know what challenges lay ahead, but he was certain that his people would face them together. Back on Luminara, life went on. The people rebuilt their homes, opened their schools again, and planted new gardens in the city squares. But something had changed inside them. They were no longer afraid of the unknown. They had seen what courage looked like. They had seen what strength truly meant. The story of the Deathworlders spread quickly across the stars. Travelers carried it from one world to another. Some said the humans came from a planet so wild that even the air could be dangerous. Others said they had hearts stronger than steel. Whatever the version, the meaning was the same. The Deathworlders were not to be feared, but respected. They were proof that even from the harshest places, light could rise. Months later, the Union created a new defense group. They called it the Guardian Fleet. Its emblem was a circle with a single star inside, just like the one on the human banners. It stood for unity, resilience, and hope. Every new recruit learned about the Battle of Luminara and the humans who came to help. It became more than a story. It became a lesson. Generations later, the words written on the memorial were still remembered. They became a saying known across the galaxy. When a world faced danger, its people would repeat it. Strength is not born from safety. It is born from struggle. And somewhere deep in the vast unknown, the Deathworlders continued their journey. They helped where they could, they taught where they were needed, and they always moved forward. For them, the galaxy was not a place to conquer, but a place to protect. Rian often said that every world, no matter how peaceful or how wild, had something worth saving. To him, being a Deathworlder was not about being the strongest. It was about never giving up. So the legend lived on. Across the stars, among countless worlds, people spoke of the time when help came not from the heavens above, but from the most dangerous world in the galaxy, the world called Earth. And in that memory, the light of the Deathworlders never faded. It shone brighter with every story told, reminding all who heard it that courage could come from anywhere, even from a world where survival itself was the greatest teacher.